Good day. Welcome to the InterFaith Forum, episode 26. The InterFaith Forum is an initiative of the InterFaith Action for Peace, IFAP. IFAP is working to build capacities for the peaceful coexistence of religious groups in Nigeria. With us in the studio today to discuss the topic, religious ideals and the realities of interfaith relations, are two highly esteemed guests. To my left is Dr. Joanna Nwosu, the project coordinator at Luxterra Leadership Foundation. Welcome, Sister Joanna.
Thank you.
And opposite me is Sister Hannatu Akilu of Women in Dawa, Abuja. Welcome, Sister Hannatu.
Thank you.
And I'm Jumma Umara Jijola. I'd like to start with you. Are ideals ever attainable? Why do religions insist that we pursue them with optimism?
Well, I would like to start by looking at the origin of the word ideal, which comes from the Latin idealis, which refers to something that exists in an idea, which means it exists in our mind. It exists as a fantasy or something that we conceive about. If we look at the word from that perspective, one would want to interpret an ideal as something that is not attainable, as a standard of perfection to which we can only aspire, but we cannot attain. But we as people of religion, we believe in things that are greater than ourselves. We are able to look beyond what is attainable based on our own human strengths and capacities and see things that can be attained by the power of a God that we believe in. And so looking at it from that perspective, from a perspective of a person of faith, I would say that ideals are attainable in this life and on this earth.
Sister Hannatu, would you like to add something to the issue of whether ideals are things that we can attain, and why does religion insist that we actually pursue ideals?
I'd like to concur with a sister, and also to add that ideals give us a direction. They also serve as a goal, a motivator for us to aspire to greater things. If you have an ideal situation, you aspire for an ideal situation, that aspiration motivates you, it generates you into going further to explore the situation where you can get a better environment or a better situation from what presently you're in. So for me, as a person of faith, like she said, aspiration for an ideal situation is attainable, because you can actually make heaven on earth.
Looking at both of your position, which is similar, that as people of faith, we should pursue ideals with optimism. Then why is it that this peaceful, ideal society has eluded mankind, we would say, for as long as time has existed? Is ideal peace ever going to be attainable on earth, or is it only something that we should wait for the good Lord in heaven to give us?
It is something that is can be attainable and will be attained. If we subscribe to justice, then we will reach idealism. Take, for example, the situation in the country where we have religious strife. If people could see the government coming in and prosecuting people who have been found guilty of committing murder or creating stress, if justice were to be seen, to be meted out to individuals, then the ideal situation is something that you can attain, because with idealism comes practice. If you can practice what you're preaching, then people will be able to see an ideal situation, because an ideal is something that is a figment of your mind, the imagination. So it is what you want, what you aspire for. So if what you aspire for, you can see the government, which is supposed to be the enabling environment for the society, acting in the proper way that it is supposed to, then it is something that can be achieved to some degree.
Sister Joanna,
Yes, I'd like to pick up on one of the last words that my sister mentioned when she said it is possible for us to create a heaven on earth. And this is exactly what we as Christians pray. When we say the Lord's Prayer, we say, your will, Lord, be done on earth as it is done in heaven. So what we are saying is that the ideal peace can be created on earth. But just as my sister has pointed out, what has happened is that we have allowed our own personal desires to becloud the beauty of what God created the world to be. When God created the world, everything was existing peacefully. The plants, the animals, the humans were all in peaceful coexistence. But when man decided that it was more important to satisfy his own desire at the expense of all of creation, then strife came into the world.
Sister Nwosu, I'd like to come back to you. Have we, as humans, what are some of the greatest challenges, would you say, over time that has mitigated our realizing ideals for peace in the world?
I would say that the first one is the selfishness of human beings. For there to be peace, there has to be some measure of sacrifice and some measure of compromise. Peace requires contentment, of one being able to look around him and say, well, I may not have 3 houses, but I do have one, and I can live in that one. And so you don't have the tendency to be acquisitive. But for this to happen, people's fundamental basic needs also need to be met, because it is difficult to say to somebody who sleeps outside in the rain that he should be contented with his position when he can see the next person living, you know, having 3 mansions or 4 or 5 or 6, as the case may be. So the human selfishness and our failure to put in place a just society, an equitable society that provides at least the basic needs for all, if I see it as one of the major obstacles to peace.
Sister Hannatu?
I concur with Sister on the innate selfishness of human beings, and I also think intolerance and rigidity in views, you know, if you cannot tolerate another person, then you do not create a platform where peaceful coexistence will happen. For one to be able to live with another person, you have to be able to see and not see. There are times that somebody would do something that is really against not exactly what you believe in, but what you would want to happen. But if you would allow that person his own space and create your own space, then you would be able to live. Because when God made man and woman, he created it in such a way that man and woman coexist together. So man has to make space for women, and women have to make space for men. Women cannot insist that men behave like men, like women, and women should not exist. So this, I'm just giving a small picture. This goes around everything in life. You have to make space for and make allowances for each other.
Comes to the next issue that I'd like for you to share your thoughts with us on. Have we as humans of the differing faiths actually gotten better at living most peacefully with each other? So would you say the human condition is improving?
To some degree, yes. On a global issue, yes. Coming back home, I wouldn't say a yes. It's a shaky yes, because there's been a lot of intolerance, religious intolerance, which in the days gone by we didn't know about. It wasn't something that existed because we all lived together. Why it is happening now is a whole, but there is a whole bunch of reasons why it is happening now. But to some degree, yes, globally. But coming back home, no.
Sister Joanna?
Well, I would differ very slightly from what my sister has said, in the sense that I think that with time we have come to interact a lot more closely with people of different faiths and cultures than we had done in the past. When I think back to maybe in the days of my grandparents, perhaps they never saw a Muslim, and they never had to, sit with one in the bus or, buy market, something from one in the market and so on. But the way the world has evolved now, we are living so closely together, and we interact on a daily basis. And so for me, that it is a testimony to our goodwill and our tolerance of one another that the situation is not actually worse than it is. But to come back to that again, I want to say that a lot of what we see as intolerances between the faith are less as a result of distrust or differences between the faith, but more as a result of a lot of inherent injustices that we are seeing in the society today.
Sister Aneta, in what practical ways can we be optimistic about closing the gap between ideals and realities in interfaith relations? Give us practical ways in which we can go about closing these gaps that we have identified that exist in the society.
We could start with having dialogues between religious leaders and of different faiths. We could also go ahead and have interfaith, interdenominational, like you have interdenomination, and have interfaith seminars, workshops, public enlightenment, both on media and electronic media and on radio. We could also go to the universities, the primary schools, and have workshops, seminars, educating the youth on how to, about the different religions, knowing about your religions. Because it is in knowing that you conquer. What you do not know, you're afraid of, and what you're afraid of, you fight. That is the basic human nature. What you do not know, you fight. So we need to have massive education on interfaith, and within ourselves, on coming down on the micro level, we need to be able to stop debates on religion. Rather than having debates, we should go into dialogue. Because when you set up a debate, you go into arguments, and arguments have a way of going into conflict. So rather than having debates, we should be having more dialogues. And I think this is one of the ways that we can actually go into closing gaps between the different faiths.
I'm talking about the different faiths and closing back. I'll soon get back to you, Sister Joanna. Perhaps one of the units that is mostly forgotten is the family unit. How would you, for example, use your family or your position in your family to drive the issues of achieving ideals in interfaith relations?
It still goes back to educating. I would start by educating my children that people of different faiths have a right, the same rights as they have to life, to space, to living, and to believing in what they believe in. They have to understand that there is no compulsion in religion, that God gave us the right to choose either to do right or to do wrong. So if God has given us the right to choose, who are we as human beings to deny each other that right that God has given us?
Sister Nwosu,
yes,
practical ways.
Just picking up on where Hajia has left off, some of the messages that we sometimes pass to our children, like we see some violence, maybe interfaith conflict, and the way we respond, maybe we're watching on the television, it has an effect on the children. I mean, if you look at it and say, well, but our neighbor next door, Hajia, Hanatu, she's not like that. Where is this coming from? And then things like when you have occasions, you have festivals, maybe some of your religious festivals, and you invite your neighbors who are Muslims, or you encourage your children to also go over there to have a piece of the ram and so on during some of the Salah and so on. These are ways that you can interact with people of different faiths, and you appreciate what is good about their own culture. So it leads to a better understanding of one another, and like you already said, when you understand people, you do not fear them.
So take it global. In the society, in community, in your workplace, going to out of Abuja, what practical things should we put in place as a people, as a government, to ensure that their ideals and realities in interfaith relations are realized?
Well, Sister Hannatu already mentioned, some of those dialogues, some of those things that can happen between the religious leaders and so on. I think that in the workplace, little practices like accommodating time for prayers, you have a Muslim prayer, you have a Christian prayer. In one of the workplaces where I had worked, there was something very innovative called a solidarity reflection, in which we would swap. So if you were a Christian, you would be given passages from the Quran, and if you were a Muslim, you'd be given Christian passages from the Bible to read, and then talk about what those passages are saying. And at the end of this kind of reflection, we usually come to the conclusion that we are teaching the same things, that we actually believe the same things. So these kind of initiatives could also be extended to universities, to schools, to encourage people to understand one another and find the common ground.
I'll come back to you, Sister Hannatu. I see you rearing to go. Okay, let's hear.
I just would like to add a little bit to what Sister has just said. Personally, I would like to see a situation where we teach our children to fight for the other person of another faith. If you find, let's say, somebody in the university, children in the university or in primary school, and a church is being attacked, I would like my child to go into that fight and fight to protect, to save that church. And I would like to see a Christian doing the same, because when you do things like that, then the golden rule of wanting what you want for the other, it comes into play, because you cannot fight for each other if you just fight on your own home ground. You have to be able to fight for the other person too, and that is when we will be able to reach that goal.
That sounds very positive. And Sister Nwosu, I'm coming back to you. Would you say your religion, Christianity, have a more optimistic and positive view of future of our reality? Or is it because they're the prophets of dooms, Is it all pessimistic doomsday prophecies of the end of time? And we should stop trying anyway, because whatever we do, destruction shall occur. Is it a waste of time?
I don't think that any genuine, well-meaning Christian would subscribe to that kind of a view. We believe in the supernatural virtue of hope. We always believe that something better is possible. And looking at the kind of testimonies that we have seen, for instance, of Muslims, just like my sister pointed out, coming out to hide Christians during time of violence, in the north, for example, and vice versa. These are all things that fuel our hope that a better future is possible. So, and even looking at our Christian faith, we believe that, like I said earlier, that heaven can be created on earth. In fact, the scripture tells us that the kingdom of God is right here with you. So we are not even looking to a perfect kingdom somewhere in heaven, but we believe that right here on earth we can create peace and beauty amongst ourselves.
So continue to strive.
Yes.
At all. Sister Hannatu, doomsday prophecy. Should we continue to try, or whatever we do anyway, the time will end? So why bother? Let's stop wasting our time.
Yes, the time will end.
Yes.
But there is also the saying that you live as if you're going to die today, now, and then live as if you're going to live forever. So if you go by that, it means that you have to continue striving. The fact that you know you're going to die doesn't mean that you just sit down and wait for death to come and take you. You have to live for the moment that you're alive. And you also have to, when you go to visit graves or you go to see people in the hospital, you're not actually being morbid. You're just empathizing. And when you see people in grave, you know, you're not thinking that I want to be in the grave. No, but you're thinking that eventually I'll get there. But how do I get there? Do I want to get there on a bad note as a bad person, or do I want to get there as a good person? So you're always striving that when you get to the end, that you're a good person. So there is no such thing as doomsday, you know. Every day is a day that needs to be lived for the betterment of mankind.
Thank you. I'd also like to say that I'll give you guys, like each of you, just a minute each to wrap up everything that we say, because this is a very important message at this particular point of our history in Nigeria, that there is a need to realize and believe that actually there is an ideal world that we can all attain to. So what would you like to say to our audience in closing?
Well, I would like to say to our audience that the ideal that we call ideal of peaceful coexistence between people of Christian faith, of Muslim faith, indeed of all faiths, is possible in Nigeria. If we actually study what our different faiths teach about love, about justice, about peace, about charity, and we strive to live out our faith the way that it is being taught us, we have no reason to fight amongst ourselves.
Sister Hannah, would you agree with Sister Nwosu?
Yes, I would. And I would also like to buttress the point that we here are of different faiths. I'm calling her sister and she's calling me sister. That is a beautiful beginning, because we believe that it is possible to exist, which we're actually doing here. And I also want to ask us, what is it that what kind of legacy would we want to leave for our children? Do we want a better country for our children and great-grandchildren? What has happened during our time has happened, but how can we change what has happened? How can we make a better tomorrow for our grandchildren? This should be the struggle of every parent, of every human being, to make a better tomorrow for those who are coming behind, because that was what the prophets did for us. They struggled. The books were revealed to make a better tomorrow for us. So what is our own input? Are we going to leave a good legacy as in making a better tomorrow? Or are we going to destroy what our parents and our great-grandparents have left for us?
There you have it, friends, colleagues, brothers and sisters. Dr. Joanna, Project Coordinator at the Luxterra Foundation, Leadership Foundation, and Sister Hannata Akilu of Women in Dawah in Abuja. Thank you for your time and efforts, sisters. May the Almighty be with us all. Viewers, please join us in encouraging what is good and discouraging what is bad always. Meanwhile, please follow IFAB on Twitter at IFABNG or hashtag IFABNG. On Facebook, follow us on InterFaith Forum, IFAB. Send in your questions through Twitter or Facebook. Meanwhile, keep the faith, keep the peace till we meet again. Thank you very much.